Okay, guys, we are live. Thank you very much for joining me. And if people are joining me from India, thank you very much for staying up late. I appreciate you guys. So I am very, very happy to present on the show today Hashim Almadani. Hashim Almadani is an entrepreneur, author, and blogger. He was born and raised in Baghdad, Iraq. He has written a book, Emancipation, that discusses various socio-political issues of the Middle East. And he also has his own YouTube channel through which he aims to foster a better understanding between Western society and more of a pro-secular Middle Eastern perspective. So, Hashim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, Hashim. So I want to sort of, again, start with talking about your own journey,
Yep.
your own journey in the Middle East, your own journey through Islam, and your own journey to creating your YouTube channel and what you talk about it. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I was born and raised in Baghdad in 1984. I studied the primary and the secondary school in Baghdad and also the university. During that time, you know that the conflict within the dictatorship lifestyle, let us say, starting from the Iraq-Iran war, and then, the American invasion and everything until the terrorists and all this movement that happened starting from the 80s until now. So in 2000 and, the fall of Baghdad or the fall of the regime was in 2003. I was doing my first grade in the university. Then I stayed in Iraq until the end of 2006. After that, I moved to Jordan. During that time, there was a big migration from Iraq to the rest of the Middle Eastern countries, to Syria and to Jordan and to Dubai, the three main places that many Iraqi families went through. So I went there and I studied my master's degree in international business. Then I decided to study a new language. And the idea was to build a base in Europe so I can settle there. And I chose Barcelona, the city. We can talk about football, for example, because I'm a big fan of Football Club Barcelona. So I went to Barcelona, learned the language, and starting from that, I began to, try to build my base in Barcelona. And last year, actually 2 years ago, I began to write my book, has been written and published in Arabic, which is called Emancipation. And it talks about the kind of comparison between things that happened in the Western society in general, in comparison with things that is actually happening right now in the Iraqi culture and the Iraqi lifestyle, let us call it. And that it has been sold out in Iraq and some Middle Eastern countries. And doing this kind of work and also being in the Western society, well integrated, knowing a lot of people who are from different parts of the world, I saw that there is a big lack of information about the Middle East in general, about the individuals. So I started my YouTube channel trying to making a kind of engagement of thoughts about several subjects from people from the Middle East. Even if you saw that I met a lot of people and I did a lot of interviews with people from the Middle East, trying to engage individuals from the Western society and individuals from the Middle East beyond the slogan of secularism.
That's very cool. And so before you moved to the West,
Yeah.
what were did you already, while you were in Iraq, did you already have did you already start having those sort of secular understanding and those secular values, or is that something you developed more when you moved to the West?
Well, one of the most important points when it comes to living in Iraq during the dictatorship, we didn't have any access to internet, neither satellite TV channels, neither some critical thinking books, so we were isolated from the outside. On the same time, when we talk about Baghdad, we are talking about a percentage of families that they are living a kind of a secular lifestyle, that you are Muslim by identity. You may do Ramadan, but it's okay to have a couple of beers in the Eid day, after Ramadan. So more or less people were in that level. I was in the same level, although I had my doubts from the beginning. So since the fall of Saddam regime and when we got the access to the internet, let us say I empowered my doubt through the sources of books, YouTube videos, comedians like George Carlin, writers like Christopher Hitchens, Bill Maher. They were the source, or let us say, the first impression that I had while I was reading and watching their videos and their material. So there was a base for that doubt. I wasn't ever a practicing Muslim. I've never been in a mosque in my life, for example. And then it moved forward toward understanding why I have my doubt and why I don't want to belong to the Islamic faith and the Islamic practicing.
So, what was there a particular time, was it, you were saying, the internet, when you got access to the internet, that's when your kind of mind started to open more and more.
Yeah.
Was that a particular time when you were growing up, even as a child or something like that, when you started questioning things on your own, or was that somebody you met that arose those questions, or was that something that was something within your family? Was it a questioning secular family?
Well, it's a little bit of each
Of
part,
everything.
like sometimes, yeah, of everything. Sometimes you meet people and you ask or question, or you have a kind of a friendly chat about a specific thing, spiritual things, religion, lifestyle, comparison between the Middle East lifestyle and the West, for example. You watch it on movies, you watch it on some, TV programs, or even you can read it in some books. Before, I'm talking about during the dictatorship as well. And you have these doubts in your mind, and it getting grow every day, depends on which level you are doing. And it was a kind of something fortunate that the fall of Saddam Hussein regime was while I was moving from the high school to the university. So it was always also a kind of change in the mindset, change in the way of thinking. By the way, there is an important thing also should be mentioned, that in the secondary school and high school in all over Iraq, we are separated, men in a school and women in another school. In the university, we go back to be in a mix. So it's a big change. And that change was also with the change of the regime and the change of the situation. In add with that, I have to say that with my family, I had also the lucky family that they accepted me the way I am. And we used to debate all the time. We used to question things. So you can see that even nowadays, when I talk with my parents, I changed many things in them, not vice versa.
Right.
Which is something very good when we think about it, especially when we try to open our mind to a new dimension and a new life.
That's very cool. And so a lot of the people that are watching, that are probably following my channel would not know a lot about the Middle East. Everybody has an opinion on the Middle East, just like everybody has an opinion on every area in the world, how the Middle East should be, what the Middle East is. Everybody has an opinion, but not everybody has actually been brought up there and knows the Middle East inside out. So what is something, would you say, is a very common misconception that people outside of the Middle East tend to have about the Middle East?
If I can put it like in a couple of points, I think that there is a very, very important subject that nobody is talking about, especially when it comes to the people from the Western society, is the big difference between the lifestyle in the villages and the lifestyle in the big cities. And when we are talking about the big cities, the big city in Iraq, which is Baghdad, is totally different than Beirut, although we have a lot of things in common. But let us say that starting from the late 70s until now, you may see that there are a lot of aspects when it comes to the Islamic societies, the Islamic lifestyle inside the society. But on the same time, you have the origin of the city. So when you talk about Cairo, you can't compare it with another country such as Casablanca. I mean, they have their goods and bads, but they are different. And also when it comes to the educational system and the background, because many countries, they suffered wars, many countries, they suffered a lot of ideological change. So there is a lot of differences that sadly it's been concepted and misguided when it comes to the Western society. This is part number one. And part number two, we lost our individual identity. That's what I was talking, that with my family, we used to debate about religion. This is something very rare to see. So maybe you're going to ask 9 Middle Eastern people, and they're going to say that, no, we didn't have that. But that doesn't mean this is my problem. Like I'm different from them, and maybe they are different from me in another aspect. So if I can put it in 2 points, the history of each city and each part, the differentiation and the differences between the life in the village and in the city, and the individual aspect of a Middle Eastern.
Is different. And so that kind of brings me to one of my most favorite videos that I watched of yours, and I enjoy a lot of them. This one I enjoyed particularly as well, because this has been one of the great mistakes of the West, and it kind of comes down to a lot of people in the West not understanding what the Middle East is, and who the people of the Middle East are, and what the culture of the Middle East is, and all of those things. And they said, well, what we need to do, what Middle East really needs, is democracy. What we need to do is go to the Middle East, we need to get rid of Saddam, and we need to install a democratic system which is a carbon copy of the American democratic system into the Middle East, and all the problems of the Middle East will immediately disappear. And the Middle East is going to turn into Paris the next day. And it didn't really work out that way, did it?
No. It didn't. Yeah.
Right.
Please, no.
So I was just going to say that, it didn't really work out that way. There might still be changes, but at the end of the day, is democracy, or is the Western style of democracy, really the answer for the Middle East?
Actually, I think that in order to build democracy, first of all, you have to build a base for that democracy.
Right.
Because, as I said, that each country has its special case. And in the video, I talked specifically about Iraq. When you try to analyze the history of Iraq in the 1958, we changed from the monarchy to the Republic of Iraq. And starting from the 58, we didn't have the idea of pluralism in the political parties and ideologies. Each ideology that they used to get into the power of Iraq, they used to eliminate the rest. So we saw the socialists, then the Baathists, then the new era of Baathists, then the new era of Baathists, which is called Saddamist. And then it was the total chaos. And the total chaos because, first of all, when Saddam Hussein came to the power, and we are talking about 35 years of dictatorship by one single person, his name is Saddam Hussein, he demolished all the structure of a civil society, and also for whatever country that you can call it, that it has a justice system, it has the independency of the the judges, the court, the police, the army. We didn't have that. So when the fall of Saddam Hussein happened, they just wrote an institution and a constitution in several months, with a group of people that nobody knew who they are. Came from abroad, and most of them, they had an Islamic ideology. They didn't even believe in democracy themselves. Right. And there was an election, and those people reached a level to be the powerful source of money, of everything that can lead to a big political party. But in the base, we still don't have any base. We don't have a justice system that we can rely on. If I'm going to have a problem and I'm going to go to the police station, they're going to tell me, well, deal with it yourself, right, because we are not willing to deal with that. If I'm going to have a problem with someone who has a good contact in a political party, I will be the one who I'm going to lose my right, whatever, even if I had all the right with it. So it changed the idea of a country from a pluralism to small mafias. Everybody can have the power to control a part of the country. And it's growing and growing without thinking about the base, which is the point number one of democracy. So if you're going to ask me, would I prefer a non-democratical secular government that can give an equal opportunity to everybody, but it's going to be, let us say, rise or given without any election, I would say yeah, because
Right.
the election didn't solve any problem. And that's why I think that, to answer your question, democracy is not the answer while you don't have a basic democratical foundation.
And when you were talking about, the other side, that a dictatorship that allows people to get, people equal opportunity,
Yeah.
do you think there was any such dictatorship in any country in the Middle East that was able to do that, or were they
Well,
all? Because all when you hear stories about the
yeah,
dictatorships in the Middle East, you see that, okay, the countries are stable, yes,
yeah,
but the people aren't happy.
yeah. Well, I think that in general, the level of satisfaction, you can't reach a level that everybody is satisfied with the
Sure.
situation. But on the same time, for example, when we can compare the democratic system that is happening right now in Iraq in comparison with Tunisia, for example, we saw that the Tunisian system went way better for a reason, because before that, when it's the time of Ben Ali, and before that it was Bourguiba, they were dictators. I mean, they were the people that they went to got the power of the country without any election and any democratic solution. But they supported the foundation of a modern society.
Right.
You know, they found it, they reached a level that they have, let us not say that it's totally equal opportunity, but it's way better than the rest of the countries. Opening your mind and opening your eyes to the rest of the world was one of the things. Also, we have the other country with Ataturk, and it's Turkey. You know, during the movement of the secularism, it wasn't democratic,
Right.
but it was a kind of a system that allowed everybody live his life the way he would love to. Now we are talking about Iraq, the democratic country that they're gonna get you in jail if you eat during Ramadan.
Right.
So this is that democratic? Is that has anything to do? But they say you have to respect the rules of the government. Well, the rules are not democratic at all.
Right.
And on the other hand, you see, for example, in Lebanon, you have a different system. They have their own conflict, but they are way advanced than Iraq. And Tunisia, for me, it's the country that it has the most advanced system because they had the base during their dictatorship.
Wow, that's very interesting. You would say
Yeah,
Tunisia if you had to choose like one country among the Middle East?
yeah. I
Wow,
would
that's very
say
interesting.
I would say Tunisia is the most advanced when it comes to the civil rights, the rules, the independency of the police and the army and the justice system, although they have their own problems. But in a comparison with the rest, their problems are like on stage 3, and we are still in the beginning of thinking of stage 1.
Right. That's very interesting. So, what do you see when you look at the future of, Iraq in particular, and you look at the future of the Middle East in general? Which way do you see the future going? Do you see the future going towards the Middle East developing a more sort of democratic infrastructure and then working towards a democratic system, or do you see towards a more of a benevolent dictator sort of system?
Well, I see that the situation in Syria changed a lot into the game of whether dictatorship versus democracy. The old school socialists, leftists from in the Middle East are a good solution, or we have to get rid of them. You know, as I told you, it's different from one country to another, and it's changing due to the change in the situation. You know, we had the Arab Spring, and then we had Syria, and the Arab Spring fall down, and now nobody is talking about the democracy in Egypt. You know, there are a lot of changes. What I can see that in general, the individual Middle Eastern is waking up as an individual. You see that nowadays, the debates that you can see it in social media, on YouTube, even people in the street, you can't even imagine that this level of open-mindedness, you can see it 5 or 6 years ago. But depends on the country. This change from the individual to the social level, until now, I can't say that it should be or it could be any change. And from the social to the institutional level, I think it's really too early to talk about a change. For example, one of the things that happened in Iraq in the last couple of months, there was the Iraqi election, and a new alliance happened between many political parties. One of the strange alliances happened between an Islamic political party and the communists. And one of the things why this Islamic political party did an alliance with old school communist people is because they tried to say that, look, we are trying to shift into secularism or modern way of thinking, which is a positive change, let us call it, even that we don't like this part or that part. But this is something that the people or the individual himself pushed toward this change. But then what's happened? Then they found a lot of corruption cases in the voting machines. Then they canceled all the votes from outside Iraq, like the people who are living in Jordan and other countries, because the level of corruption reached a level that you pay money per vote. So if I'm the responsible of the voting station in Jordan, I sell it to a politician, and the vote reached to from $50 to $100 per vote.
Wow.
So we are talking about millions.
Right.
They canceled it. And then when they tried to show the last result, they said, no, there are a lot of problem into some stations, voting stations, in some villages that nobody is living there. And we are receiving that there are more than 15,000 votes coming from this village. So we have to recount it. And something that happened yesterday, that the main station that they have all the votes and the papers, for the coincidence, it gets in a big burn and fire.
What a coincidence, eh?
Yeah. This happened just yesterday. So now everybody is talking about re-electing and doing a re-election.
Wow.
So now you ask me, shall I stay with the positive that Islamists are trying to get within communists, or think about the corruption that's happening after that?
Right. It's a good question, and so it's such an interesting place that the Middle East is in right now, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about the regular Middle East person who's awakening, so to say, and who's discovering all of these new ideas, particularly after the spread of social media, after the spread of internet and stuff like that. And that's what I kind of wanted to ask about the regular Middle Eastern, because people see the Middle East and the problems within the Middle East and sort of Islamic radicalization and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How is the regular Middle Eastern person, or somebody growing up in Iraq?
Yeah.
How are they dealing with the Islamic radicalization, so to say, that people associate the Middle East with? What is the general Middle Eastern's relationship with Islam at this point?
Well, as I told you, in the last 5 years, there were a radical change toward people that they are opening their mind toward civil rights, secularism, other things. And many people, the last statistic shows that there were between 5 to 6% of declared atheists inside Iraq, which is something that nobody would think about 10 years ago.
That's crazy.
So this is very interesting thing to think about and to talk about, especially when I'm seeing people from small villages that normally they are the people who had the lowest level of educational system. Even some people, they didn't have enough schools. They didn't go to learn how to read in schools. And they are exchanging books by Christopher Hitchens and by Richard Dawkins and those things, and talking about evolution. So, as I said, that there is a revolution on an individual level. On the same time, there is a lot of push backward toward radicalizing the people, the Muslim themselves. And from point number one and point number two, you see that what is the image that the people want to send to the Western society, because we have a big problem that the identity, the Middle Eastern identity, is totally hijacked by the Islamic identity. Whenever I'm gonna say I came from the Middle East, 99.9% everybody would think that I'm a Muslim. And I'm not only a Muslim, I'm a practicing Muslim,
Right.
which is AKA a conservative Muslim. So the image, which is something that it didn't came to the come to the mindset of a Westerner by coincidence, is because there is a lot of there are a lot of things going on when it comes to the media, when it comes to the responsible of the Islamic community in the West, especially, that they are trying to push forward the profile of a conservative Muslim to be the only image of a Middle Eastern person. So there is a conflicting struggle between the secular individual and the Islamic community. Until now, I can't say that the secular individual reached the level to be a community. So he can say, no, I'm not from the Islamic community, I'm from the secular community.
Right. And another very important aspect of that as well is that if you look at the political games that are being played in the Middle East right now, you see and not just in the Middle East, and this applies to India, where I'm from, and Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
next to me as well, is you see a lot of these Saudi-funded organizations, and you see a lot of this Saudi money, a lot of this Iranian money going into the schools, going into the madrasas, going into the mosques, and mosque-related educational institutions, and a very particular sort of ideology is being pushed. In Pakistan and India, I've seen over the decades that the Saudi money has come in very large amounts, and these preachers who go get their education in Saudi Arabia, and then they come down to India and Pakistan and they go preach there. And this has led to this strain of radicalization among a lot of Indian and a lot of Pakistani Muslims as well. And how much of a contribution of that do you see in other countries in the Middle East that are not, these oil-rich Middle Eastern countries?
Yeah. What I during the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein, we used to be a closed country, very closed, that we didn't even receive the radicalization, because we were closed. But when we saw what's happening in the rest of the Arabic countries and the Middle Eastern one, we were looking at ourselves and we saw that, wow, what's going on here? Then the funded money came to support terrorism inside Iraq. So we saw that many people, they were normal Muslim people who may, as I told you, they may pray the Friday prayer, and they may go to do Ramadan and stuff, and they changed in few months, to be radicals, and radicals that they support terrorism and they support jihadism. And it came to Iraq after 2003. The number of terrorist people that we saw from an Iraqi origin, I think, rose from, maybe if there were like 10,000, it became 100,000 in several months, because there are a lot of money involved in it. And when it comes to money, people can change their identity and their ideology, because they not only gain the money, but they gain the power and the position. So when I went to the rest of the Arabic countries and Middle Eastern countries, I saw that this funded mosques. And by the way, it was a big surprise when I saw that even in the Western society, they use the word madrasa for an Islamic school, although the word in Arabic means school, not Islamic school.
Wow.
So when you think about it, when I said that it's hijacked the Middle Eastern culture, it's even hijacked the language. So because now madrasa, which is school, became an Islamic school.
Wow.
And there is also another thing. Allah, it's God. It's not the Islamic God.
Right, right, right.
So God changed from Allah to the name of the Islamic God, whose name is Allah, and madrasa from school to Islamic school, and Middle Eastern into Muslim.
Wow,
You know?
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to, because I wanted to ask you that as well. Like, you look at, you recently had this American policy of banning immigration from, or people coming in from these certain countries. And I
Yeah.
thought that was so funny because
Yeah.
it did not have the main funders of these terrorist activities in that
True.
ban. Like, I understand, okay, if you really want to ban the problem people, so to say, in quotes, then you ban the people from the countries where this massive funding is coming from and this massive support is coming from. Because
True.
if you look at a lot of these Syrians and a lot of these Iraqis, they're caught in a horrible situation. And I'm not exonerating Iraqis who have turned to terrorism or anything like that, but I'm just saying that, at the end of the day, these guys are the foot soldiers.
Mhm.
These guys are the ones that are fighting and killing and dying. And Saudis and all these rich, Qataris and all these people get to sit in their rich houses with their money. They just get to throw money at these other Arabs and they go fight our battles for us.
True. Look, for example, when it comes to the Muslim ban, the so-called Muslim ban, I saw that there is like a percentage of so naive people from the left and from the right as well. From the left, they say you banned Muslims, which is number one. And from the right, they were celebrating banning Muslims. On the other hand, when you think about it and when you see the named countries, are the countries who didn't have a deal with the American government. You know, Iraq was one of them because during that time there were a kind of conflict between whether Iraq will be in an alliance with Russia and Iran, or they're gonna come back to be an alliance with and form the alliance with the United States. Syria, it's because they are with Russia, so they banned them. It has nothing to do with Islam. So when you think about it, most of the Islamic countries are not within the ban. This is number one. In general, when you are from the Middle East, it's really hard to get a visa to the States. I mean, nobody would go nowadays and say, go to the American embassy and ask for a visa, and they're going to give it. It's not like this. There's a possibility of 1 to 5% maximum. So before the ban, it was bad as well.
Right.
So nothing changed. The only thing is that when you see that the left and right, they are talking about a Muslim ban, while a Christian with an Iraqi passport, he also got inside the ban.
Right.
It's not because you can't do a kind of, like diverse this part or that part, whether it comes to the religion, because even in the passport, you don't have the religion written in the
Right.
passport.
Because that's what they
So
would have said, they would have said that, oh, this is, if they would have said, oh, Christians from Iraq can come, but no Muslims, they would have said, oh, this is straight racist. But they said,
exactly.
okay, nobody from Iraq can come.
No, nobody from Iraq. But then there was a big meeting between Donald Trump and Haidar al-Abadi. He is the prime minister of Iraq. And then the next day, Iraq was excluded from the Muslim ban. And they became, I think, 6 countries instead of 7 countries. So this is the thing that I wanted to mention, that even when it comes to the Muslim ban, we saw that most of the people, they just put the Middle Eastern identity apart and they took us as a one big box of Muslims, which is not true.
Exactly. And that brings me to the people say, the Ummah mentality, that Muslims have this Ummah mentality. And at the end of the day, how much value does this mentality really have? Because when you look at the way the Iranians and the Saudis
Yeah,
are playing with the lives of other people in the
true.
Middle East, they don't really care as long as, Pakistani Muslims die, as long as Indian Muslims die, as long as other Muslims in the Middle East keep dying, just as long as they are dying fighting the infidels, so to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what value does this Ummah mentality have? Because another point to that is a lot of Indian Muslims not everybody, of course, but a lot of Indian Muslims and a lot of Pakistani Muslims, you will see, they look up to the Saudis and they say,
Yeah,
oh, we are descended from the Saudis. We are
right.
Arabs and we are descended from the Arabs. But then when they go work in Saudi Arabia, they're treated like trash.
Yeah.
They're treated like dirt. They don't have the same rights that the Arabs have in Saudi Arabia. And they're treated like dirt. They are jailed for unnecessary reasons and executed without any trial. So, does this whole ummah mentality really make sense if this is the way that one section of Muslims are treating the other section of Muslims?
Look, when the idea of the Muslim Brotherhood came with the petrodollar from the Gulf country, they tried to make an affiliation of people from the rest of the countries by eliminating the identity, the national identity, and change it to the idea of we are all Muslims. So we can get more power and we can gather together as Muslims. So we saw it. The Shia Muslims, after many years, tens or starting, for example, in the Iranian level with the Shia, starting from the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and when the Sunni version, it became with the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in the late 50s and the beginning of the 60s. So we saw many people, they changed their identity, and the only identification that they would love to be called, or they feel proud about, is by their religious identity, and then by the sectarian identity. So we saw many people that they are loyal to Iran. And by the way, most of the Islamic political parties in Iraq, they are pro-Iran. They are totally loyal to them.
Wow.
And if Iran said yes, they have to say yes, which is the big problem in Iraq nowadays. The same thing happened with many countries, that when Saudi Arabia says that you have to do this or you have to do that, you have to follow the leaders of the Sunni Ummah and of the
Right.
Shia Ummah. One of the funny things, when people, they try to bring this pride, we are the nation of the 1.5 billion, but you see the Sunni hates the Shia, and the Shia hates the Sunni, and the Sunni hates the Ahmadi. And then it goes within the nationalities. You see that the Persian, he feels more Persian, and the pro-Arabic, he feels more Arabic, and the Southeast Asian, he feels more into Southeast Asia. So you miss this concept of the Ummah, but you notice it very strong in the Western society. And it's because the ideological aspect of the Islamic community eliminated everything except the Islamic identity. So I saw it more into the Western society than in the Middle Eastern one. Because trust me, when two Middle Eastern football teams, they play against each other,
Right.
everybody hates each other, you know? But when you see the same people walking in London, he's my brother.
Right.
You know? So you see it more in this way. It's try to give the pride of the identity in front of the infidels, let us call it.
Do you consider it useful in any way, or do you think that ultimately it serves no purpose really? The mentality of the ummah in the modern world. Do you feel like it is useful, or do you feel like ultimately it doesn't really serve any purpose? Because under the skin, under the surface, once you, like we were just talking about, once you get under the surface of the ummah, you see all of these horrible fault lines
Yeah.
and all of this hatred towards each other. But then, like, as soon as we go to Britain, we love each other immediately.
I consider it that this is one of the main reasons that hijacked our identity. I mean, for example, imagine there is a moderate Iraqi Muslim, and there is a moderate Pakistani Muslim. Culturally speaking, they don't have anything in common.
Right? Yeah.
Not the language, neither the food, neither the lifestyle in general. That doesn't mean that this is better than that, or vice versa. It only means that they are different. But when you want both of them to work for your own benefit, you have to find a kind of matching between them. So the Iraqi Muslim and the Pakistani Muslim gonna feel that they are serving for the same purpose, and the purpose is the religion, nothing more than that. So countries who have this ideological aspect of giving a lot of importance to the militias, let us call it Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Iran, they can't go further and get many followers unless they put the concept of the Ummah. But so the concept of the Ummah is hijacks the identity and the cultural aspect of the individual himself, and while he feels that he is empowered by it because he's gonna be gathered as an ummah, as it says.
One of the questions that I got from when I was talking about, doing an episode with you on Facebook was how, people often talk about, and especially this is more true with people who are more radical than others. They often talk about how Islam and Muslims are in constant danger. And how, from somebody who grew up there, how much truth is there to that in the Middle East today in terms of a regular Muslim? Or is a regular Muslim constantly in danger from the infidels, or is it again just something that is being cooked up by the radicals? Because this was a question that was asked by somebody who's obviously not from the Middle East.
Well, it has been cooked up by the radicals, but it changed to be one of the elements of the mindset of a Middle Eastern, of a Muslim himself. Because we are talking about a religion that is considered to be the perfection. So if there is something that it doesn't work well, that means it's not the problem of the perfection, it's the problem of the others. Who are the others? The others who are against the perfection. So you always feel that the threat from the rest. One of the things that I told you, when they get you into jail because you eat in Ramadan, is because you are offending the Muslims. That means that you always feel this threat that can touch your inner self, And this, we had it also in the educational system and in the books, in the curriculum. We got it that the West and Israel are against us. They are thinking every day to let us leave Islam and do this and do that. People, they used to fall in this trap a lot, and I have to say that there is not a majority, but there's an important percentage of people, they still believe in that. But day after day, as I repeat, individuals are waking up while the social norms and the institutional system of the countries doesn't allow this awakening.
As a secular person in the Middle East, from in living in Europe, in the West, from the Middle East, what has your experience been like? Because I moved from India to the US recently, and it's been a very interesting experience because the far right, the far right end of the aisle, they like the things that you're saying against the people that they don't like.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they don't like you as well.
True.
And then you have the far left that dislikes you, and a large percentage of the left that dislikes you because they see you just as a hater and as a bigot and as hand in glove with those people on the far right. So, what has your experience been like? Do you where do you see more kinship with?
Well, I said this phrase before about the relationship of a secular Middle Easterner with the left and right, is that the lefty will share a beer with you, but he won't share his opinion, your opinion, and the right will share your opinion, but he won't share a beer with you.
Right.
So
that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, because I saw it in many ways. I saw that many people who consider themselves are radical, whether to the left or to the right, they are not that radical. They only have this mindset and point of view that they don't want to change, or they don't want to hear any opinion that is different from their opinion. This is the first point. What I saw, I live in Spain, and in Spain the situation is a little bit different when you try to compare it with France or with the UK or with Northern Europe, because in Spain there weren't any massive movement of immigrants. Most of the immigrants came from South America, that they speak the language, they
Right.
have the same, more or less the same culture. So it's really, although there is a big Moroccan community, but even the Moroccan community, they have a kind of similarity with the Spanish historically. You know, when it comes to during the Second World War and after that, they used to do a lot of trades together. So more or less, they have this kind of settlement that the Moroccan community is part of the Spanish community, whether we like it or not.
Right.
What I saw when it comes to whether the people are from the left or the right, they lack information. So maybe in the beginning they gonna hate you or they gonna love you that much. But when you're gonna get involved in the conversation, I think it's a kind of challenging thing for them to hear someone, not only me, but someone who may think the way I think and who has the secular concept as the main concept and the main identity. What I saw that one day I had a conversation, and it's a real story, with a guy who is a pro-communist, and he's a friend of mine. And I was talking about the rebels in Syria. And I was saying to friends that they, by the way, they are not rebels, they are Islamists who are trying to do one, two, three. And he told me, but it's impossible that it's true, because in the curriculum in the books, while we do some conferences, they ordered us to support this movement, ordered
Wow.
to support this movement. And he was a little bit offended by my words because he was thinking about something fixed. And I came and he knew me, that I'm a normal person, I'm well integrated. I was having a beer with them and a group of people. And when we began to talk, he accepted my point of view, but he won't share it with other people for a reason, because as it talks about Syrian refugees and the right, they hate Syrian refugees. So I have to be pro. Even from the inside, I know that there is someone from the Middle East is giving me more information and more accurate information about the real situation. So the concept of the left and right is way ideologically driven, more than individually observed. So the secular Middle Eastern won't have a good place, whether within the left or the right, because ideologically it's not we are not the good people in the
Right.
eyes
Right.
of the left and right, you know?
That's very interesting. And so, another thing that kind of brings me to this point, another thing that you talked about in one of your videos, you were talking about, a lot of people in the West say, and a lot of people in countries say that, hey, our problems will go away if we just get rid of all Muslims, if we just
Yeah.
get rid of them, deport them all, and your problems will just go away. But the thing is, do your problems really go away though? Do your problems on a grander scale really go away though? You'll be fine for a decade maybe, but your
Yeah.
problems aren't really going away, because you're not getting rid of you're not helping solve the problem. Because what you do is, when you get rid of all Muslims, what you're also getting rid of are secular Muslims. What you're
Yeah.
also getting rid of are ex-Muslims. What you're also getting rid of are Muslim reformers who might either be practicing Muslims or ex-Muslims. You're
True.
getting rid of those very important voices that will not get the chance to speak
Yeah.
within Muslim communities. But here in the West, they will get a platform and they will be able to speak, and people will be able to hear them. And then some Muslims, maybe one Muslim, maybe two, maybe three, however many, will listen to these people and reevaluate their doctrine, and will go back to their books and be like, okay, this part really does not make sense to me
Yeah.
anymore. And so those voices are so important, whether it's an Ayan Hirsi Ali, whether it's a Majid Nawaz, whether it's somebody like you. These voices make so much of a difference and are so important. So when you're saying, oh, just get rid of everybody, that's not a solution, right?
No. Actually, first of all, it's not a realistic solution, because you see someone who was living, for example, in the UK for the last 40 or 50 years, You won't kick him out because you are a Muslim. I mean, how you can identify, or even if he gonna go to the court and say, look, I'm not a Muslim, although he's a Muslim. How you gonna solve this case with
Right,
him? You know, because you're living in a country with like it has a secular base and a secular and civil rules in general. The thing is that the problem with the Western society is that there are some movements who are tolerating the intolerable when it comes to some Islamic organizations. I mean, I remember one of the days I was talking with a Swedish friend, and he was talking about Al Muhajirun, which is literally ISIS.
right,
And he was talking as if Al Muhajirun is part of the Islamic community that we have to accept. Although, for the sake of the good Muslims, you have to point out toward the bad apple. So the problem with the Western society is dealing with the radicals, while they are considering that a radical Muslim is a very good Muslim. And Islam is a religion of peace, so he is radical for other reasons, such as the colonization of the Middle East and
right.
so on, you know. But in general, you are giving the power to the radicals in this way. The same thing when it happened to the argument from the right that let us kick everybody. That means that you consider the radical is the actual Muslim, and you have from the other part that the people, countries as Saudi Arabia, are pushing toward making the radical Muslim as the Muslim and the leader of the Islamic community. In part, in order to implement something, you have to put and point and be so strong with the radicals themselves, not with the Muslim. Because let us be so clear, even if there is a conservative Muslim that I disagree with most of what he is saying or most of what he believes in, but if he doesn't affect badly on my own rights, I don't have any problem with him.
Right.
I mean, if I'm gonna sit on a table and discuss religion with him, and when I finish, I'm gonna say, "Well, we agreed not to agree. See you and goodbye." And he won't threaten me to be killed. I don't have any problem with it. So the idea of kicking out everybody, first of all, it's not realistic, and second, if we're gonna take another example that they don't have any Islamic immigration, which is Poland, for example. I think Poland, they have a lot of economic problems, and that's why most of the Polish people are going to the UK to work minimum wage work. So it's not the whole problems.
I know, and you know, you're right in the sense that you're missing out on that skilled labor as well, because you're thinking that okay, I'm going to keep my country homogenous and it's going to be fantastic, but at the end of the day, the skilled people from all over the world are going to other countries, like they're going to Britain, they're
Sure.
going to France, they're going to the United States, and they're making those countries better country, more prosperous country, much more prosperous than Poland, for example.
Sure.
So you're missing out. So there's that aspect of that as well, and I think it's so important, that point that you made as well, about if it is okay to disagree. You know, what happens is that in India, for example, the culture that I belong to, being a Hindu,
Mhm.
my culture often teaches people that it is okay that you don't disagree with someone. It says the truth may be one, the ultimate consciousness of the universe may be just the one thing, but the ways to reach it are many. You know, you
Mhm.
might find that Star Wars takes you there.
Yeah.
I might find that, you know, something else, Star Trek, takes me there. But at the end of the day, I'm not chopping off your head just because you say, I like Star Wars, man. You
Yeah.
know, and that's a very fundamental aspect of public discourse. And that's a very fundamental aspect of, human culture that I think, which is something that I think Islamic theology is struggling with today. So that brings it up. Like, do you think that Islam, in the form that it is today, and unedited, unabridged book that it
Mhm.
is today, do you think that it will be able to merge with that in any way, with that philosophy in any way? Because such a strong tenet of the radical Islamic doctrine is that if you do not agree with what I am saying, then you are 100% wrong and you are
True.
100% going to go to hell.
Look, one of the facts that we saw in the Middle East in general, the same community that is that suffers nowadays, the Islamic fundamentalists and the Islamic radicals, they used to be very open-minded in the 50s and the 60s. The Quran is the same Quran, and the Hadith is the same Hadith, and the Islamic teaching is more or less the same. The problem and the change that happened from the 60s until now is putting religion as a lifestyle, not only as a religion, as a book that can rule a country and as a lifestyle that you can live with it. Also, when you think about it from a classism point of view, the Islamic fundamentalists, they change from being the poor class into being the high class. That's what happened in most of the Middle East, especially, as I said, in the rise of the Islamic and the Muslim Brotherhood, because they went to the Gulf countries and they came back as rich businessmen. That's what changed the community in general. So in order to going to the point that the Middle Eastern countries and the Middle Eastern individual go back to his origin, that his culture is his own culture and only part of his culture is Islamic, due to the majority of the people who are believing in the Islamic faith as a religion, not as a lifestyle. We have to isolate the religion from the lifestyle rules. I repeat the same example of Ramadan. When you put an institutional rule for Ramadan, you're going to think about it all the time. That doesn't mean that you are dealing with the religion as a religion. You are dealing with it as a constitution for a country. When you go to the Western society, you see that many Westerners and many movements from the Western society are okay to believe that practicing the Islamic religion and the Islamic lifestyle is a cultural thing. I mean, wearing hijab, or when women, they wear hijab, it's not a Middle Eastern cultural uniform. It is an Islamic religious practice. So in order to go back to the normal point, I think that we have to isolate the religion from the idea of being a lifestyle and putting it only as a religion. The same thing with Christianity. And the most important point, when someone comes from the States, I won't consider him as a Christian or a practices Christian, because in the States, there have the civil rules and you have like a civilized, modernized lifestyle that everybody can do whatever he wants.
Right, that's true, and I agree with that as well, and that's a good point that you make. And I watched recently. I watched a video of yours with I think it was Tommy Robinson.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed that video, man. That you two did. And how did that video come to be? It was really interesting.
Well, actually, I had a couple of conversations with Tommy Robinson to invite him to my channel.
I see.
To do an interview. And after that, I had a short business trip to the UK, and I texted him that I'm coming to the UK. And he told me, is it okay for you to do an interview for the Rebel Media? And I told him, it's okay. And I prefer to talk about the Middle East more than religion, which is something that I love to talk about more, because the main idea of doing the videos is embrace and empower the secular movement inside the Middle East more than attacking the religion, because it's not my primary objective. So he accepted that, and we met and we did the record. And to be honest, one of the things that I saw in Tommy Robinson himself when we had a chit chat before we recorded the video, he loves to learn a lot. He wants to learn. He wants to ask a lot of questions, to understand, to increase his level of knowledge in some aspects. And one of the things that it took my attention when I met him, is that he was so surprised that I'm from the Middle East. And then when we began to talk, because we talked about football, we talked about nightlife in London, we talked about different stuff before we went to record the video. And we ended the conversation after the record. That's, if we're going to see each other, let's hang out for a beer. Let's not talk about religion or anything. So that's also has a lot to do with the question that you asked me about the far right and the far left. And I told you not all the far are really far. So it was a really
Exactly,
good,
and
yeah,
that's what I think about Tommy Robinson, and why I've seen so many people, so many YouTube videos, so many newspaper articles. The first thing they say when they talk about him is say far right leader Tommy Robinson, and I
yeah,
really don't think that's the case. You
no,
know, I understand that he has associated in the past with people that you can consider far right, but he himself, I do not think he's a far right. If you listen to him talk, there's a surprising amount of nuance in the issues that he's talking about and in the arguments that he puts forward. And after his arrest, yeah, I understand whatever he did. I don't completely understand the legal issues of what happened there, but people are like, well, he was a radical far right, this and this and that, and of course he should have gone to jail. And I'm like, I don't think people that are talking about him in that manner really understand or have really seen a lot of what he has said.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that while I was talking with him, he told me himself is that the authority are really afraid of an upcoming clash between everybody. So they are trying to shush everybody, so the situation would be on the same level and without increasing any possibility of a clash between British people and the Islamic community and so on. So he told me that they try to put restriction on everything, just like to prevent any problem. On the same time, he mentioned many issues that I would say, if he used to wear suits and speak in a posh UK accent, many people will accept him. The only thing, if he is, because he is wearing a Fred Perry or a Stone Island jersey and
Right.
talking and speaking with a like East London accent, many people, they say like, he's a Nazi, he's a far right, he's blah blah blah. And I repeat, in the UK in specific, that there is the problem of the classism to classify people. If you are someone from the street and you try to criticize Islam, you will become a radical Nazi. But if Douglas Murray criticizes Islam, so he is a right-wing bigot. He's not a Nazi, but he's
Right.
a bigot.
He's a bigot.
Although both of them are criticizing the same thing, but it's the way of criticism. And from the same time, I see it that Tommy, whether people like it or not, he made a great impact into the society.
He got people talking about that stuff, because nobody before he just started talking about it non-stop till
Yeah,
somebody would listen. And before he came to the scene, nobody really was focusing on the whole grooming gang aspect of it, which turned out to be a much more serious problem than people initially thought.
true.
So it's something very important that he brought out attention to. And I wanted to kind of ask you, living in Spain, because we see, okay, this is what's happening in Britain, this is what's happening in France, this is what's happening in England, in Germany, sorry. What's the situation like when it comes to free speech and these issues and the friction that sort of radical theology has with the general population?
Well, in general, Spain, as I told you, it's a special case because in Spain there are a lot of problems. One of them is the economic problem, and the other you have the federal problem with Catalonia, with the Basque Country, so and the Spanish nationalists. So let us say that the internal problems are the main reason or the main problems when it comes to immigration, to other stuff, to criticizing Islam. All those aspects are considered to be secondary, you know. But when it comes to the free speech, um, the decrease of the limits of the free speech, I think it's going worldwide. It's not only about Europe or the UK or the States or Trump. It's about social media effect. And one sentence that you can, and one phrase that you can phrase it the way you would like to phrase it during that time, and everybody gonna share it on YouTube and share it on Facebook, and it's gonna become something that the government or the authority should interfere to change things. So we saw many people, for example, there is a very important case that happened in Spain, and nobody from the mainstream media, they covered it that worldwide talking. A rapper, he did a rap against the king of Spain, and then they put him in jail
Oh,
because he
wow.
considered to do something anti-constitutional, because he wished the death for the king and the kings and something, and it considers something an attack against the free speech. But guess what? The people who were involved and put this rapper in jail were the right wings, and the left wing here are talking about free speech.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So why do you think that happened? Why do you think the equation completely flipped?
No, the equation, it didn't flip, but it's who is the person who has the power?
Right.
You know, if you have the power. Other thing that happened also, there is a Spanish band, a communist band called Sociedad Alcohólica. They banned a couple of concerts in Madrid and in other cities because they were doing some direct attack and verbally abusive word against Spain and against the royal family.
Right.
So that came from the right wing who were in power. But trust me, if we flip the coin and the left wing will be in power, many groups that they gonna consider them as far right, and they gonna ban their shows. So
Right.
banning and the authoritarian way of thinking, I think it's the new wave of mindset post social media effect.
Right. So one of the questions that I have from Arun, who asked this question on Facebook, he said, you know, people often talk about, and you were talking, and we kind of, I think, discussed this earlier as well, because people were talking about there's the extremists in the Middle East, and then there's the terrorists who are sort of committing the atrocities in the Middle East, and then there's a proportion that is called, the sort of silent majority, or
Yeah.
a silent section of the population, that even though they're not going to pick up the gun or the knife and commit the crime, but they may silently agree with some of the things that the terrorists are doing and the terrorist beliefs and so on and so forth. And how big do you think this population really is? Because there's like 100 studies that say, oh, it's 70%, it's 90%, it's 50%, I don't know. But how big do you think this population really is? And is it increasing or is it decreasing in your opinion?
Well, first of all, the percentage, I think it's impossible to say like they are 30 or 40 or
Right.
50. The other question, they are decreasing, and there is a reason. When terrorist attack began to happen inside the Middle East, people began to think about the sources of terrorism. ISIS, one of the main reasons that many people left the Islamic religion, or they left the idea of a conservative Muslim. I mean, one of the things that happened during many years ago, many people, they used to say, no, terrorist has no religion, terrorism has no religion. But now we see that there are even TV programs in Egypt, some channels that broadcast from the States and Europe, but they talk in Arabic, like DW, the German channel, Tele5, the French channel, and we have a channel called Al Hurra, which is an Iraqi channel based in Washington. They are doing full debates about discussing the source of hadith and the Quran, and whether this is an extremist religion, and this text is supporting killing the infidel, and so on and so on. So absolutely that the level is decreasing, although there is a big problem in the mindset and in the education and the teaching of the religion itself. It's really like a dilemma to struggle, to think about the struggle of questioning perfection. I mean, no, but it's not everybody's capability and his mind ability to think about and try to change and aspects and facts that he used to think that they are facts. One of the points that now some Islamists they are using it is trying to push back toward showing the good examples of Muslims by saying they are the one who represent Islam, like Mo Salah, the Liverpool player.
Right.
There is a big propaganda in the Middle East that this is the real Muslim. But now the situation is not like before. People are laughing at them. I remember I saw in an article on Facebook, one of the guys, he was mocking another guy who wrote an article that Mo Salah is the ambassador of Islam. Okay, and the guy who was mocking him, he told him, you know what? I made the statistics, and after he three atheist Middle Eastern, they saw 3 matches of Liverpool, and they went back to Islam because now they saw Muhammad.
Right.
So to answer your question, the number is decreasing, and there is a big challenge when it comes inside this community.
I think that I completely agree with that as well. I would say, before we wrap up, I really did want to talk a little bit about football with you, if that's okay, because
sure.
You're a Barcelona fan, and it always hurts my heart to talk to Barcelona fans because I'm an Arsenal fan.
I've been in Emirates 2 times.
Really?
Yeah. Arsenal, Barcelona 2 times. The 2-2 with no, the one that you won 2-1.
2-1, yeah. Arshavin scored.
Exactly, and Cesc Fabregas, I think, scored the penalty kick.
Yes.
Right. And the other one was when we won 0-2 with Messi. It happened like 3 years ago or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So it's always interesting talking to Barcelona fans because Barcelona is responsible for what? Knocking Arsenal out of the Champions League.
Yeah, that's true.
5 out of the last 6 years or something stupid like that.
True.
So yeah, it's interesting because now that Wenger's retired, we've had a new guy come in. Is he
Unai?
Is he
Unai
Basque? Is he Basque?
Yeah, he's from Basque country.
Right. Yeah. So a new Basque guy, Unai Emery. So you followed I think Spanish football regularly, right? Because of Barcelona?
Actually, I used to support Barcelona since the year 1996. So I chose to come to Barcelona because I'm obsessed with football, and I'm a season ticket holder, and also I go to away matches. I'm part of an association of group of Barca fans that we deal with the social area of the club. So So actually, I'm gonna send you an article that we did something. We changed from being a Facebook group that organize away matches, trips, and into being one of the official candidates of the Football Club Barcelona presidency.
Wow, that's so cool, man. Yeah, make sure to send that to me.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
And now we are dealing with the social area by putting the problems that happened with the members, because Barcelona is a member club that you have to be a member so you can get the season ticket and some access to away match tickets. So we did a lot of changes. One of them is that the club pays part of the transportation for the away fans.
Wow.
And organized a private transportation agency.
That's so cool. So that's why I sort of wanted to ask you, because you're somebody who follows Spanish football. You're somebody who obviously follows Barcelona. What have you watched any of Unai Emery at all?
Yeah, look, Emery is a very good coach to create new projects, but the new projects that within the level of Sevilla. Sevilla is a team that they bring a lot of new players, they form them, and then they sell them. The problem with Unai Emery is that he is not a league coach. It's really hard. Like, he doesn't have this long-term way of thinking. Maybe he's gonna win a cup. Maybe he's gonna win something like what he did with Sevilla with the EuroLeague. But Sevilla, they always get knocked down in the Champions League, and they always had problems with beating big teams in the league. If you would ask me about whom I would prefer to be the manager of Arsenal, I would say Luis Enrique, for one reason. It didn't happen. The old Barcelona coach, he has a very strong character and a strong, I think Arsenal, what they lost in the last years with Arsene Wenger is the character, the character of a winning team, because it's okay to reach in the top 4 or the top 6, but even the Arsenal player, he knows that nobody would ask him to do something more than that.
Right.
So Unai Emery, he has a lot of things related with Arsene Wenger.
Right,
He's more or less the same style. So I didn't see that they did that radical change in this aspect.
What I was thinking would be interesting about him, is because he's one of the things that he said when he signed, and one of the things that the chief executive of Arsenal said when they signed Unai Emery, is that they said that one of the things that we really liked about him was that he's very organized. That is something that Wenger really lacked in the last few years with Arsenal, because he said he's very organized and he always creates a very clear game plan for the team. And what he believes in is possession, and what he believes is in pressing really strongly when you don't have the ball. True. And those are all things that Arsenal really badly lacked before when Wenger was around. So I'm very interested to see what he brings to the table on that front, because this is a team that was highly disorganized. This is a team that had no identity, and this is a team that was very lazy off the ball. So if he can come and fix at least those 3 things, I think it'll be a much better team.
Yeah.
Right.
Let us hope so, because seriously, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, Arsenal, apart from losing the identity, is that they were not willing to change that.
Right.
And the situation was going from bad to worse. It wasn't going in the way that it's stable and that's it. Because we saw that Tottenham are growing up. Chelsea, from time to time, they do at the perfect season for them. You have Manchester City and Manchester United that they are going on the top all the time. So even to rebuild Arsenal, maybe it needs time, and the competition, it's way stronger than 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. I agree with that. And on that hopeful note, I think we've had a very fantastic chat. And again, I want to really thank Hashim. I know you've got stuff going on tomorrow, and it's probably a little late there, but I want to still thank you for coming on and having a chat, mate. I really had a good time.
Thank you, man. It's a big pleasure. I wish you all the best, and we hope to keep in touch. Maybe next time you're going to come on my channel and we're going to talk about India, because seriously, I lack information about the Indian culture and the Indian situation in general, and it's a very interesting topic to talk about.
100%. I'd love to just say the word and I'm there. So I'd love to do that sometime. And again, guys, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you for participating in the comment section. You can make sure to follow Hashim as well. His information and his channel and his Twitter will be provided in the description below. Please make sure to go check it out. Please make sure to go subscribe to his YouTube channel. He talks about a lot of great stuff. And again, you can follow me. My information is down there as well. If you like today's video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below. I will see you again for the next one. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.